You're listening to an audiobook based on the novel Hidden in the Sun written by Audrey Marie Inman. Chapter 3.
Evelyn. Finally. Come and sit, thank you, Ella.
Aunt Meredith said dismissively. I glanced at Ella with a frown, but she shot a wink my way for reassurance before disappearing behind the large frame door. They hardly ever requested to talk to me alone. The room was light with cream walls and white accents. The furniture, also, a pristine white. An ancient, colorful rug screamed of wealth, and large windows surrounded the room on 3 sides, allowing in an abundance of light. I've been in here a few times during my stay, but it's usually reserved for guests. In one of the large cushioned chairs in the corner sat a rather tall and stiff man. Perfect features and hazel eyes. He was without a doubt a vampire. I couldn't help stiffening. I've only been around Sarah since the accident, so I immediately looked to my aunt and uncle for an explanation.
Evelyn, this is Hannah Gray, headmaster of New Haven Academy. He wished to speak solely with you.
My fists clenched unintentionally at that name. My father had worked in close contact with him, as they are trying. We're trying to integrate young vampires and humans in hope to bridge the awful gap created by their elders. Before their death, my parents had been trying to get me enrolled as an ambassador of sorts. Headmaster Gray had not been too keen on the idea, and had me undergo extensive tests. For what reason, I am still uncertain. Was he informed of my disinterest? I replied a little too harshly. But I seem to be doing that a lot lately.
Now, Evelyn, don't be so rude. Mr. Gray is our guest.
Aunt Meredith hinted, fidgeting nervously, while Uncle Frederick seemed quite amused. I sighed and turned towards the headmaster expectantly, and was surprised at the slight upturn of his lips.
Why, Miss Woolacott, you are much more headstrong than you were in our last meeting,
he said with his familiar deep and fluent tone, eyes hidden by a glare in his thin glasses. Vampires don't usually need glasses unless they are seers. Don't get too excited. They are a lot more common than you'd think, usually among Asian descent. His only leverage in being his brother, who is a powerful seer for the Raven family. I may put off an air of indifference, which is true, but I always keep my ears trained and listening. Why, Mr. Gray, it seems as though you mistook me as weak before, I said, narrowing my eyes slightly. He chuckled and reached up, removing his glasses and placing them in his inner jacket pocket, the smallest revelation of trust among seers.
I regret to say that I had.
His black eyes met mine.
It was one of my reasons for feeling so skeptical about your prosperity at New Haven Academy. Your test results reassured me in surprising ways,
he said in his smooth Asian accent. He eyed me for a moment.
Miss Woolacott, before his death, your father and I became rather close, so to speak. It was his wish that you be permitted to attend. I do not necessarily agree with his ideals, but seeing as it is his last wish, I plan to honor it,
he said firmly. With all due respect, I know your character a little better than you give me credit for. You are not a trivial man, and most certainly wouldn't let me into your school simply because my father died. What is the true reason for your sudden change of heart? I asked. I hated being so proper, but when dealing with vampires that had a god complex, it was a must. He and my father were hardly what you could call close. In my honest opinion, he was a snob who looked down on any and all humans, unless they were useful to him. My father's relatively high position in society was the only thing keeping me out of the slave ring. If it weren't for my aunt and uncle stepping up, I would have been auctioned off as either a blood slave, pleasure slave, or worse. I would have been placed in a donor house to live my days out until the house tired of me and dismissed me. I shuddered, remembering how they had drugged my dear friend Alyssa from her home a few years back. Some people dreamed of it. Being placed in a donor home all but guaranteed wealth, status, and unspoken protection upon leaving. I'd prefer to die.
New Haven is quite a prestigious school, although not unheard of. Humans are occasionally permitted. They are tested severely on all aspects to see if they can, not only handle the mental capacity that vampires possess naturally, but to also see if they are strong enough emotionally and mentally to compete with such an elite race. You excel on all aspects of the tests. Better than many vampires who have taken the same test. Simply put, I would be a fool not to accept someone so bright.
He finished, and I studied him for a moment. Was it worth it? Suffering such this. Superiority all for a chance at gaining respect that was unrealistic because I was human? I'm not interested, I responded and swiftly turned away.
Evelyn.
My aunt cried as I reached for the door.
I thought you might say that.
He responded.
Which is why I brought this.
I paused and swiftly turned tired and annoyed. Look, whatever it is, you can keep it. I won't check.
It's a letter from your father on the morning of the accident.
He cut me off, but it was enough to stun me into forgetting whatever it was I wished to say. What? I said, ever so softly, unsure that I had even spoken at all.
Read it.
He said, now standing, holding it up slightly in my direction. I stared at the white piece of paper, the handwriting illegible from here. Dare I read it? Cautiously, I took a step, and then ungracefully rushed forward, taking the paper in my hand. Scanning it critically, the air caught in my throat. The swift, smooth lines, the long, delicate strokes, it was his. I glanced up at the stoic man before returning my eyes to the letter addressed to him.
Hanabusa. I am pleasantly pleased to hear that my oldest has excelled your tests, although not surprised. She has always had a strong mind, and is not easily swayed by the frivolities of others. Her morals are strong, and so is her will to achieve what must be done, which is why no other could possibly be right for this job. In time you will come to see that even you yourself are wrong about your expectation of her. The whole world is, for just like your tests she will excel past anything you can possibly categorize her as. She is more than human and she is more than vampire. Her mind is far too superior to be labeled as such. In time both you and her as well will realize just how important she is. For now, I ask, as her new headmaster, watch after her and guide her, but do not try to tame her, for you will find that impossible. Best regards. James A. Woolacott.
Shaking, I read it again. What did he possibly mean? My father was a humble man. He didn't just say things on whim, but why did he think I was so important? I'm stubborn, not unflawed. Why did it have to matter so much? I closed my eyes for once, at a loss of what to do. My brain wanted to dismiss it all and go back to sleep. But I can't possibly stay holed up in my room forever. For whatever reason, I was given a second chance. Do I wish it were my father or mother instead? Yes, but I didn't get to choose. Going would be exactly what my parents would want. I couldn't rely on my relatives' charity forever. My uncle was a vampire. Surely, he would realize the inevitability of me having to enter the blood pool. If I went to this school, I could at least put it off for a few more years, and maybe find a good job somewhere. I sighed and then opened my eyes, staring up into his dark, unwavering eyes. Okay, I said, watching his eyes light up. I'll do it. I finished shoving the letter back in his hands and walking out of the room, leaving behind my stunned aunt to settle the details. I'm sure he already expected my answer in some form to be a yes. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the trip in person. Please don't let this be a mistake.